one piece of this data in particular around the most talked about esports leagues. And so the headline of this article from .esports is ALGS is the second most talked about esports league on Twitter in 2022. And if you look, if I go, I don't know why this is not loading, but what's interesting is League of Legends took the top spot. Yeah, here we go. So it was CBLOL number 1, Play Apex Esports number 2, LCK number 3, COD League number 4, Overwatch League number 5. So interesting. You have 2 League of Legends leagues in the top 3. You have 2 Activision Blizzard leagues in the top 5, and you have Apex number 2. I'm curious in general to get your guys' reaction to this. This is not the only measure here is it's the most talked about on Twitter, right? Which is just one data point. It's not, it has no bearing on the success of the leagues, really, right? There's no direct correlation that I've seen. It's really just what's most talked about globally. What is your reaction to this, guys? Do you think, is this what you expected, Jeff?
I'll go first. My biggest takeaway or surprise, and maybe this is me just being unaware, but the fact that Apex is number 2 is surprising to me, particularly over Call of Duty, given that, I feel like we talk a lot more about the Call of Duty League as an esports league, just in terms of the structure, the owners, the fact that they've sold these teams for massive amounts of money, versus the Apex League, which I'm not familiar how much. I don't think EA is super hands-on. Like I don't believe they franchised it. So that for me was surprising to see that that's the case. Maybe it just happens to be when the season started, and the fact that it happened in the first half versus Call of Duty League, maybe that's part of it. I don't know, but that kind of jumped off the page at me was like as being a bit surprising, and then I'm curious to see what EA decides to do with Apex if it's having this much success from an esports perspective.
Yeah. I mean, Grant, sorry, let me just read this because maybe you want to comment on it. Hamslot said, I didn't expect Overwatch League to be mentioned at all. Oh, no.
Oh, that's brutal. I was going to say, I now understand why I was the special guest this week. Thanks, Hamslot.
Sorry,
yeah, so, I mean, I'll start at the very top. So, one, I love Rishi and his team, Zach, and I think there's a new guy now, too. I appreciate that they put these together. I think they're awesome, and obviously have a lot of good insights. I will say I was just very surprised in general at all of this for a couple of different reasons. And I think the part that gets me is, and I think he posted a blog, and I don't know if anyone read it or if it's in there. Like, I don't know how this is measured, right? Like, is this literally just people tag at Overwatch League, at COD League, at LCK, at like I don't know what the actual measurement is. And so that was just kind of the first piece that I was just like a little unclear about. From there, you can like kind of hypothesize a little bit why like franchise. So if you just assume at a base level that it is literally tagging a team or the league's actual account, it actually seems very plausible that COD League and Overwatch League are 4th and 5th, or at least top 5, because basically, like, there's 20 franchise teams in the Overwatch League, and that's basically what we do all day, right? Like, we tag the opposing team that we're playing in match day graphics, in in shit talk or whatever, right? Like, that's literally what teams do on social in franchise leagues. The surprising thing for me is like, where is LEC on this list? And whereas LCS, right? Like you kind of expect those leagues to they're just bigger leagues, right? Like I think you just kind of expect them to also be on here. But again, unsure of the methodology for exactly how you count this. Was pleasantly surprised to see Overwatch League on there. So thank you for that. Yeah, and I think to Jeff's point a little bit too about like Play Apex, it's like they have like kind of like a pseudo like partner program, a little bit similar to like what Valorant's trying to do. But like it's a real question with like the success they saw at ALGS champs in Raleigh and whatnot. Like, should you be franchising Apex? Like, should you be solidifying partner teams a little bit more? Like probably. And obviously it's nice for EA to have one title that is successful given Battlefield's issues.
So Paul, I want to jump in here because Grant gave a nice shout out to Rishi and the team here that put this together at Twitter. I want to tease that we're actually having Rishi on the show in a few weeks to dive into this more in depth.
Oh, there. Okay, so ask Rishi. I was going to send him an email.
So we will ask Rishi.
I'll wait till the show.
I love having everyone's insight on this. We want to talk about it because it's current. And also to Grant's point, it's interesting to see what the media covers, what's in the news cycles versus what people are actually or more so talking about and tagging. But we're going to have Rishi on the show. Twitter's head of gaming content and creator partnerships, I believe, is his official title. So look forward to that in just a few weeks. And we'll get really in depth on this with the guys that put it together.
The other thing is, where is Valorant? Speaking of Shroud, speaking of Valorant, like, and so like this is where I go to, and look, I'm not trying to like tinfoil a conspiracy hat at all, but like, I do think how they're measuring it is probably a little unique in terms of like, not unique. It's just probably not maybe capturing like true sentiment around titles or leagues or esports, because I feel like in Valorant, like nobody ever tags VCT or whatever the handle actually is, right? Like you tag Shroud or Optic and you tag players, right? Like I don't feel like fans, just because it's not franchise and like you don't have like the big team accounts necessarily like sitting around with like individual handles that are just dedicated to Valorant. I don't think there's like an Optic Valorant handle, right? It's just the main Optic account, which probably tweets like less about Valorant because they're covering all of Optic's teams. So yeah, again, I do think there's like probably something interesting about like how you measure the rankings. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong or intentionally misleading or anything like that, but I do think there's probably something because, like, again, you would expect Valorant or LCS or LEC to be on the list.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, and obviously we're going to go more in depth with Rishi, but like one of the graphic I didn't bring up was also like the top mentioned streamers on Twitch, right? Or players, and like number one was also a Brazilian streamer, esports org. Sorry, the most mentioned esports org, right? And so you have like Brazilian League of Legends, and then a Brazilian esports org, and so like part of me believes that it's also just where Twitter is heavily used and markets where that I think we live in a little bit of an echo chamber as hardcore gamers, right? Where Valorant, in our minds is a huge game and was known by millions when in reality, I think it's a more niche, a more hardcore title. And maybe that's reflected here, right? Versus an Apex or a League or even a Call of Duty where has broader appeal. The Apex thing I thought was interesting, and I wanted to bring it up because Apex has taken a very different approach than all the others on that list, right? Like the Riot leagues are very structured franchise leagues. The Activision Blizzard ones are very structured franchise leagues. The Apex one sort of came together. I'm not knocking the guys at Respawn, but feels like a little messier, came together a little slower burn and with less direction. I don't know if that's fair to say, and yet still has seen success. I don't know if there's any business conclusions to draw from that, but that slow burn sort of let it figure out itself approach, right? It's almost like two ways of raising kids. So you either you have them in 65 different after school programs and every minute of their day is structured versus do whatever you want, go outside,
Well, and think about what it does to expectations, right? Like you have no buy-ins, it's whatever teams, viewership can be what it is, right? Like it gives you time and a runway to hopefully build things the right way, like build up a real third-party tournament system, build up grassroots, organize, figure out what you want the rule set to be, figure out how many events you want to host during the year, like build a real economic model that supports teams, right? Like when you don't launch a league with, a giant multi-million-dollar buy-in, you have time to figure out all those things. And people are more forgiving. You don't get a total pass, right? Like people were very upset about the visa situation. EA was making them play on kind of scuffed computers, right? Like there's still really bad things that multi-billion-dollar company EA should be able to figure out. Well, like you get like a little bit more leeway when you launch a title like that. And I think publishers are like kind of enjoying that path, right? Like it puts less pressure on their employees. Like Riot's doing something similar with Valorant and their franchising kind of system. I was just gonna add the comment too, like Counter-Strike doesn't have a league, right? Like you talk about a ubiquitous title that's mainstream, and you're like, well, Counter-Strike can't even be on there, right? Like they don't, I guess you could put ESL Pro League, maybe. But yeah, all in all, interesting. Happy to see Owl on there as fifth, and yeah, that'll be going in a sponsored deck or two on my end.